Hello, today I will be analyzing an article that addresses one of the most pressing global concerns in education, which is gender disparities in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematic fields, or what we commonly call STEM. These disparities don't just affect students in the classroom, they also influence long-term career opportunities and representation within the workforce. The article I'll be discussing is titled Gender Study on the Relationships Between Science Interests and Future Career Perspectives by Kang Hintz Shiroso and Kenoen. It was published in 2019. The authors look closely at how students' interests in science differ by gender and how those differences shape the way boys and girls think about their future careers. So the study within the article focused primarily on Finnish grade 7 students, which is around middle school age. The researchers wanted to see how three dimensions of science interest, which include personal value, enjoyment, and cognitive engagement, relate to career aspirations. To do this, they used a statistical approach called multi-group structural equation modeling, or also known as SEM. This allowed them to compare how three components of interest link to career orientation differently for boys versus girls. The results revealed some clear gendered patterns. Girls reported stronger interest in biology, while boys were more drawn to physics and chemistry. More importantly, the study showed that different aspects of science interests, like whether students found it enjoyable, valuable, or engaging, shaped career perspectives differently for boys and girls. The authors argued that these differences begin to emerge early, even as early as seventh grade, and that's why education systems need to address gender pathways in STEM at this early stage. So there are a couple of strengths I found within the study that were mentioned in this article. So first, the author's early focus on adolescence is extremely important. As mentioned before, the article looked at middle school students, and this provided evidence that gendered patterns in science preference and career orientation don't just come about in high school or college. They can be seen much earlier. The findings support other global studies like Wang and colleagues in 2023, who also stress the importance of intervening early if we want to broaden participation in STEM. Secondly, I appreciated the multidimensional view of interest. Instead of treating science interest as one simple thing, the authors broke it down into three, which include enjoyment, relevance, and cognitive engagement. That's significant because these elements don't always influence students in the same way. For instance, a student might enjoy science but not see it as relevant to their life, and that could impact their career goals differently than someone who finds science highly valuable but maybe not as fun. So now diving into the limitations. There was those strengths, but there was also the limitations. So the findings are based almost entirely on Finnish students. And while Finland is well known for its strong and equitable education system, not every country operates in the same way. So the results of this may not apply directly across different cultural and also socioeconomic contexts. As UNESCO pointed out in 2017, structural barriers vary greatly across the globe, and those differences are extremely important. Another limitation is the lack of attention to bias and social factors. Things like teachers' expectations, stereotypes, and representation in STEM fields play a huge role in shaping whether students feel a subject fits them. This study, while strong, did not take those influences into account. There are also a few missing considerations. For example, Charlesworth in 2019 highlighted how stereotypes and identity processes shape students' self-concept and aspirations. Kang and colleagues didn't directly measure those factors, and UNESCO's 2017 report reminds us that gender intersects with socioeconomic status. Low-income girls, for instance, may face additional barriers compared to their higher income peers. Together, these perspectives highlight the need for more intersectional analysis of STEM participation. So, things that I agree with and also found enlightening, I found that the structural equation model results show that the pathway from interest to career orientation differ by gender. And I think that this is so important because it reinforces the need for tailored education strategies instead of a one-size-fits-all approach. Not all students are on the same level or have the same background, have the same access or opportunities, so we need to meet the student where they are. I also, though, disagree at the same time with the author not emphasizing social and institutional influences. By focusing so heavily on internal interests, the article doesn't completely highlight the disparities that come mainly from within the students themselves, when in reality, systemic barriers often have a much stronger effect. So, overall, I believe the authors make a valuable contribution by showing how multidimensional science interests can shape career aspirations differently for boys and girls. Their findings strengthen the case for addressing gender disparities in STEM early education. Their study also reminds us that fixing these disparities isn't just about focusing on students' individual interests, but it also requires systemic effort to dismantle the structural barriers that continue to shape educational experiences when looking at what was missing. So while this article did provide those useful insight, it also challenges to think more broadly about equity in STEM and how we can just help create dynamic learning environments that are inclusive, supportive, and empowering for all students.